Welcome to another reading of Lord Mayhare. The year is 1952. The page is 3189. Each and every must, wherever he may be, is helping in the inner crusade. They all know that things are going to happen which have never happened before. I have to contact 7 musts out of the names on the list. I have already communed with 4 of them. Will contact the remaining 3 today and then rest for a while before proceeding to Hamirpur. When I bless the world with my grace, it will be due to the eternal grace I enjoy from Sai Baba, Babajan, and Upasani Maharaj. Baba gave darshan to about 300 of his Bombay lovers at Ashiana that afternoon, including Irene Coneybear, who had arrived in Bombay the day before from America. Irene Coneybear was a British intellectual who had met Meher Baba for 5 minutes 11 years before in 1941 in Dehradun. Baba sent her ahead with Meherji to Kanpur by first-class train so that she could attend the mass darshan program at Hamirpur. In the evening, Baba again contacted musts, the last of whom was Umar Baba, who passed away on 8 June 1953. All of the Bandali were permitted to witness this contact from a distance. After Baba had worked with the must, he was very pleased and told the Mandali to take Umar Baba's darshan. All then returned to Ashiana. Baba left Kanpur by train in a crowded third-class coach on the night of Sunday, 16 November 1952. For fun, he gave each of the Mandali with him a line on which to compose a rhyme. Those whose rhymes turned out well were given rewards. Jalbey and Dake narrated humorous stories to Baba, keeping him in a cheerful mood. Kumar, another accomplished raconteur, would also regale him with tall tales. After traveling for a day and 2 nights, they reached Kanpur early in the morning of the 18th, where they were joined by Meherji and Irene Coneybear. Baba's lodging was arranged in the large bungalow of a magistrate, and the Mandali stayed in the house of Bhavani Prasad Nigam. He, Keshav, Pukar, Sripat Sahai, Lakshmi Chand Paliwal, and Sheetal Prasad Nigam had made the best possible arrangements, and the lovers of the district had dedicated themselves in Baba's service. From Kanpur station, they were driven along 60 miles of dirt roads to Hamirpur, arriving at 10 a.m. Irene rode with Baba in his car. You will see the real India, he remarked to her. A pontoon bridge over the Jumna River was opened for traffic that day, and Baba's car was the first to cross it. For the next 10 days, from the 18th to the 27th of November, Baba gave darshan to the masses at various places in Hamirpur district. Wherever he went, enormous crowds gathered. Nothing but a sea of humanity could be seen. Age was wonder-struck. As a moth that goes mad for the flame, regardless of the danger to its life, such was the condition of the masses of Hamirpur during the darshan programs given by Baba during the fiery free life. The fire of love was aglow in full brilliance, and in its flame people were experiencing a sweet comfort never felt before in their lives of trouble and concern. Indeed, while commencing the very first darshan in Kanpur, Baba spelled on the board, "The spiritual atmosphere of this place is very high." During these 10 days, darshan programs took place at the towns and villages of Hamarpur, Barwa, Sumerpur, Ingada, Maudaha, Mahewa, Mahoba, Kulpahar, Panwari, Rath, Naranga, Majgwan, Jarakhar, Dagwan, Amarpura, Kangaram, Donauri, Banda, and Harpalpur. At each place, the first activity was the ceremony for the 7 destitute, disabled, and needy men and women. None was an outright beggar, although each represented an extreme case and had been selected after a laborious search. They had been chosen irrespective of caste, religion, or sect, and were brought before Baba as his guests. According to Baba's wish, at the place of darshan, a makeshift room was set aside, curtained off on all sides, with a small raised platform in it. Hot water, soap, and towels were kept ready, and the guests would follow Baba to the room. Except for the mandali and a few workers, no one was permitted inside. Baba would place his head on the feet of the 7 destitutes after washing and wiping them dry, and as his love gift would hand each rupees 51. Baba would then go to the darshan canopy. Before his arrival, loudspeakers blared out, "No one should bow down to Meher Baba or touch his feet." There was pin-drop silence as Baba entered the pavilion and took his seat on the stage. According to his wish, this message was conveyed. Spiritually, we are all one and equal. The same infinite one resides in us all, individually and indivisibly. I bow down to you collectively and individually, considering you the representatives of that one unchanging eternal truth. The meaning of my bowing my head and offering salutation to you is your offering salutation to me. And so, after my salutation to you, there is no need for anyone to salute me. With folded hands, Baba offered his namaskar to all, amid repeated cries of Sadguru Meher Baba Ki Jai. As age related, it seemed as if the ocean had sent its waves to engulf the shore, and all lives were drowned in it. All eyes gazed as one at Lord Mayor, and the bindings of duality, for the moment, were swept aside. Thereafter, Baba's explanation of his fiery free life was read out to the crowd. The role which God has willed for me has had several phases. The pre-realization ordinary state, the old life state of realized divinity, the new life state of perfect humility and intensive seeking of God as truth through the achievement of mononash, and the tripartite free life, which emerged after the attainment of mononash, have all happened by God's will. In the first part of the free life, culminating on July 10, 1952, bindings dominated freedom. It was in this first part that the personal disaster, for some years foretold by me, took place in the form of an automobile accident while crossing the American continent, causing me, through facial injuries, a broken leg and a broken arm, much mental and physical suffering. It was necessary that it should happen in America. God willed it so. In the second part of this free life, freedom had dominated bindings. And in the third part of this free life, commencing from November 15, 1952, both freedom and bindings are consumed in the fire of divine love, which destroys the very basis of the illusion of duality and all its paraphernalia. I am not concerned with individual reactions to me as an individual. They will be as various as there are individual temperaments. My sole concern in the fiery free life commencing from November 15 will be with the divine truth of my realization, which I would like to share with those who seek it. The consuming of freedom and bindings, which is characteristic of the fiery free life, means that there is a complete blending of the God state and the man state, so that the one does not live through opposition to the other, and there can be no question of the one encroaching upon the province of the other. Spiritual freedom is essentially a positive state of conscious enjoyment of infinite divinity. It does not have to maintain itself through the constant overcoming of any bindings, for these come to be realized as not bindings of the soul in its essence, but as temporary bindings of the body and the mind, which can in no way curtail the bliss, power, and understanding of conscious divinity. Marvin, could you continue, please?
In other words, the bindings to which the soul seems to be subject turn out to be no bindings of the soul in its true essence. The bindings are realized as only illusory. After the annihilation of the limited mind, the infinite consciousness of the soul, with all its knowledge, power, and bliss, remains unaffected by any weaknesses or diseases to which the body might yield as a result of natural laws. The perfect ones who retain normal consciousness and the body, even after realizing the unchanging and absolute truth, dwell eternally in divine love, which transcends all duality and surpasses all understanding. They enjoy abiding and unassailable peace, for they have at last arrived at the final goal of creation. I have no connection with politics. All religions are equal to me, and all castes and creeds are dear to me. But although I appreciate all isms, religious and political parties for the many good things that they seek to achieve, I do not and cannot belong to any of these isms, religious or political parties. For the absolute truth, while equally including them, transcends all of them and leaves no room for separate divisions which are equally false. The unity of all life is integral and indivisible. It remains unassailable and inviolable in spite of all conceivable ideological differences. And then Baba says, I am equally approachable to one and all, big and small, to saints who rise and to sinners who fall, through all the various paths that give the divine call. I am approachable alike to saint whom I adore, and to sinner whom I am for, and equally through Sufism, Vedantism, Christianity, or Zoroastrianism and Buddhism, and other isms of any kind, and also directly through no medium of isms at all. Footnote says these lines had been dictated by Baba the previous July for his meetings with the New York group. When I was in America, people asked me when I would break my silence. I in turn asked them, if my silence cannot speak, of what avail would be speeches made by the tongue? When God thinks my speaking would be heard universally, he will make me break my silence. However, silence or no silence, he who would deeply ponder over the truth, which I declare, shall eventually be initiated into the life eternal. Side by side with other activities of the fiery free life, there will invariably be one constant feature of that life, wherever it takes me. I will bow down to the saints whom I adore, the musts whom I worship, and the poor to whom I am wholeheartedly devoted. Nothing makes me more happy than the opportunities to bow down to God in all these forms. I like bowing down to the people rather than being bowed down to. To serve and worship God all around me is closest to my heart. In the fiery free life, all the frailties of the ego life are completely consumed, and there is complete emancipation from all wants, desires, and temptations. And the result of this fiery free life will make the world understand that Meher Baba and everyone is one with God. After this message, darshan would begin. People would go to Baba in rows, one by one, and Baba would give them prasad for hours on end. Yeshwant Rao would sit on one side and hand Baba the fruit to distribute. The dais was heaped with flowers, coconuts, bananas, and coins, and Baba was covered with garlands. Erich would frequently remove the garlands and put them aside, as Baba, like a machine, distributed prasad. When the crowds were especially unwieldy, he would give prasad with both hands, his sweet smile pervading the darshan pavilion. On such occasions, in utter disregard of all inconveniences and personal fatigue for himself and his men, the thought uppermost in his mind was that every man, woman, and child should receive prasad and have his touch. Baba would often remark, when people have to stand in line for hours on end, waiting for their turn to come to me only for a moment, shouldn't we be willing to put up with a little suffering? Besides his explanation of the fiery free life, 7 other messages dictated by Baba in October at Marazad were printed in different languages as a booklet, which was distributed among the crowd gathered at each place. Only one message was read at each program. Besides such messages, at times Baba would convey something of particular interest to the crowd through the alphabet board, which would be relayed over the loudspeaker. One of Meher Baba's prepared messages was titled Life Eternal. And the message said, without beginning and without end, the caravan of evolutionary creation marches on from the immeasurable to the immeasurable. Most persons on the way get caught up in the transient immediate and evolve by conscious or unconscious reactions to it. Some can detach themselves from the transient immediate, but since their detachment is only intellectual, they enjoy freedom only in the realm of the limited intellect, which now tries to comprehend the past or anticipate the future as best as is allowed by the limitations under which it works. They try to shape the present in the light of their knowledge of history, as well as in the light of their insight into the possibilities for the unborn future. But the limited intellect is not competent to grasp quantities which are beginningless as well as endless, with the result that the purely intellectual perspective, even at its best, inevitably remains only partial, sketchy, incomplete, and in a sense, even erroneous. The intellectual perspective is workable and even indispensable for planned action. But in the absence of the deeper wisdom of the heart or the clearer intuition of the spirit, such intellectual perspective gives only relative truth, which bears upon itself the stamp of uncertainty. The so called planned action of the intellect has behind it many mighty forces which have not even come to the fringe of consciousness, and it also actually leads to many valuable unexpected results, which are entirely beyond the range of vision of the so called planning. In other words, intellectual planning turns out to be a planning mostly in name, containing in it only as much truth as is necessary to justify the players in feeling that they have had a real share in the entire game. Actually, everything in the evolutionary creation is wrought solely by the infinite power of God, who works in eternal silence, from behind the screen of, as it were, unknown, unfelt, and even unsuspected by most players who are in the passing flashlight of the stage. Some, through the grace of the masters or the grace of God, succeed in unlocking within their own being the hidden spring of divine love, which unveils the unlimited and certain understanding of the infinite divinity, which in its eternity comprehends not only the apparently beginningless past and the apparently transient present, but also the apparent interminable future. The apparent infinity of the stretch of time is ultimately unreal, even as time itself is ultimately unreal. It is the last spiritual understanding which facilitates conscious realization of the absolute truth. The illusory infinity of the time process is taken up into the true eternity of God's illimitable life and being. The God men who get consciously established in the limitless understanding of God can know the past, the present, and the future. But for them, this knowledge of the fleeting shadows of eternity is far less important than complete merging into the fathomlessness of God, infinite understanding, and infinite truth or reality. In fact, everyone without exception has this true existence only in and as this limitless being of God as absolute truth. But it is like having some hidden treasure, which, although in our possession, is as good as non existent, as long as it remains unknown. The sole purpose of evolutionary creation is to place the soul in conscious possession and enjoyment of this infinite treasure. In the perfect ones, God works toward this end consciously, but it is He alone who works through everyone and everything else. And although this work is mostly unconscious, it also leads to the same end. This may be clarified with the analogy of breathing. Breathing is the very basis of life, and the stopping of breath means dropping the physical body without terminating the existence of the soul. But this breathing is for the most part carried on unconsciously, and we become conscious of it only in cases of exceptional effort. In the same way, God's working through the evolutionary processes is mostly unconscious and silent, and the stopping of this working brings about the end, the pralaya of creation, without terminating the existence of God Himself. God becomes conscious of His working only in the rare cases of the God men who own and enjoy Godhood in eternal life. For ages and ages, God has been working in silence, unobserved and unnoticed, except by those who experience His infinite silence. In addition to mass programs, Baba would also attend private functions and visit the homes of his close lovers. When he went on such house visits, Gadakar would perform his arti at every place, and Baba had laid down this condition that those men who had accompanied him must always be with him wherever he went. At the times of darshan, Kumar, Baba's umbrella man, would regularly and quietly arrange things and keep the crowds in check. The message of Baba bowing down and its meaning was read aloud at each program, and only after he had bowed down to the masses were other items on the agenda begun. During the darshan in Hemapur, a man named Shiv Narayan walked up to Baba. He was completely covered with dust. He immediately began performing Baba's arti. Baba embraced him most lovingly and handed him some fruit, which he told him to eat then and there. Afterwards, it was learned that the person, in order to have Baba's darshan, had covered a distance of 27 miles on an empty stomach, prostrating himself full length on the road each step of the way. While going on this pilgrimage, he had inwardly repeated Baba's name, and his penance earned him a heartfelt embrace from the God-man. The Mandali were lodged at Bhavani Prasad's house in Hamapur. At supper time, Baba came and sat down on the floor with them, whereupon he asked, "Oh, you still haven't finished your food? Never mind. Eat slowly, but be ready to leave soon. Take your time and have your fill, but do not delay." Glancing at Nanakar, Baba jocularly referred to his plodding manner by saying, "He won't finish until tomorrow." Admonishing Pankraj, he asked, "Why thrust food so hurriedly and forcefully into your mouth? Eat less, but more often." Thus, Baba was at his contradictory best. He wanted everyone to be served with all the items of food, yet at the same time was in a hurry for them to finish eating. Observing this, the local people began laughing, and Baba remarked, "I feed their bodies, but starve their minds." Referring to Hamapur, at one point he disclosed, "In one of my previous advents, I stayed in this area." This may be a reference to Lord Ram's period of exile in the jungles. When Baba went to Pukar's home in Hamapur, he became quite serious and stood perfectly still. His mood seemed to still the surroundings also. Only his fingers moved as he worked intensely. After a while, the chirping of a bird put a sudden end to the quietude, and Baba returned to his normal self. In Hamapur, a pundit named Matra Dutta Sastri, came in close contact with Baba. He was an Orthodox Brahmin, well versed in the scriptures. He had come with a view to deriding Baba, but seeing him, his heart underwent a miraculous change, and he bowed his head at Baba's feet and remained dedicated forever. Another scholarly devotee was Madan Mohan Agrawal of Agra. He had helped prepare the 5 religious models carved from alabaster that Baba had used during the Manonash phase, and finally met Baba for the first time in Hamapur. Madan had thoroughly studied the Ramayana by Valmiki, but only understood at Baba's feet the true meaning of this great epic by finding Ram incarnate and becoming his follower. Another of Meher Baba's messages was given out at this time was on miracles and spiritual healing. When people suffer physically or mentally, individually or collectively, they want immediate relief from that suffering. All over the world, man's strife is subject to the opposites of pain and pleasure.
Thanks, Marvin. Rosalie, could you unmute and continue, please?
Man does all he can to avoid the former, and he does all he can to have the latter. But he cannot always avoid pain or always have pleasure. Pain and pleasure are inseparable twins, born of a multitude of cravings and desires. Where the one is, the other also invariably is as a constant companion. Consequently, man is interminably caught up in the quick interplay of these two opposites, unless and until he goes to the very root of both of them and frees himself from the self-perpetuating ignorance which gives rise to a million cravings. The scars left by the non-fulfillment of desires or by the assailment of unwanted happenings are difficult to erase so long as the mind continues to be swayed by the winds of multifarious cravings. And when the usual worldly ways of seeking redress from suffering come to an impasse, man desperately turns to the supernatural for exploring unknown possibilities of seeking amends and recompense. This is the realm of miracles. But even miracles, in the last analysis, are illusory, even as every happening of this world is illusory. There can be no special point in producing some petty imitation illusions in the mighty infinite illusion already created by God. The healing of physical or mental suffering can be achieved through the exercise of supernatural powers, just as it can be achieved through ordinary natural remedies known to man. But such healing has ordinarily no special spiritual significance. It is far less important than true spiritual healing, which takes away from the mind the very seeds of all possible suffering. Miracles are justified only when they are performed for the purpose of drawing humanity at large toward the final goal of realizing God. Otherwise, they are definitely an interference with the natural evolutionary process. In fact, people should look upon physical and mental sufferings as gifts from God. They bring their own lessons of the futility of the passing and the intrinsic worth of the eternal. When accepted with grace and understood in their very root cause, they chasten the soul and introduce it to the abiding happiness of truth. While in Hamirpur, Baba sent Pendu to the telegraph office to send important telegram. When Pendu went inside, no one was there, although the office was open for business. Everyone had gone for Baba's darshan. Pendu found a peon, asked him the name of the chief clerk, and went back to the place of darshan, where he had the man paged over the microphone. The man immediately returned to his office, and the telegram was sent. When Baba was on his way from one place to another, people would stand on the roadside out of reverence, and Baba would have to get out of his car to give them darshan. While he was on his way to Ingota, about 500 men, women, and children from the village of Sumerpur had waited for hours for his arrival alongside the dirt road. They raised a small platform for Baba to give darshan, and he lovingly acceded. Mass darshan was a time of tempestuous, non-stop activity, day and night, that started many fires, which eventually inflamed the entire district. Those with Baba could rest only after they reached Ingota on Thursday, 20th November 1952, where accommodations for Baba and the Mandali had been made at Lakshmi Chand Paliwal's home. But for Baba, his only, quotes, rest, end quotes, was discomforts and hardships. Baba agreed to visit Bindra Prasad Nigam's home, where his family requested permission to perform Baba's Arti and Puja. Upon Baba's agreement, the worship ceremony started, and luminous rays of love penetrated the room, causing the whole gathering to weep. Baba, with great tenderness, cut the tearful ceremony short and hastily left the house. Thereafter, for about an hour, he was restless. He began walking back and forth opposite Paliwal's residence. At times, he would come to a sudden stop, as if gazing steadily at something in the distance. Becoming uneasy, he would occasionally sit down on the ground in the dust, immersed in his internal working. Baba did not look around and was oblivious to the surroundings. Baba sat like statues, silently looking at him.
So
Baba.
that's people sat like statues.
Oh, well, he is us, right? People sat like statues, silently looking at him. Baba's right hand fingers moved rapidly while he was in this solemn mood. After about half an hour, the indescribable silence at sunset was broken when Pukar loudly cried, "Baba!" Pukar had, up to this point, been fixedly staring at Baba. Now he could no longer contain himself and said, "Baba, when I was a child, I once dreamt of Lord Ram. This is the exact spot in my dream where I had seen Ram and had his darshan. Baba looked at Pukar and seemed to smile slightly. Still, he appeared quite distant, and there was a vacant look in his eyes. Everything again became still. Baba stood up and casually rested one foot on a nearby ledge. Hardly a few seconds had passed when there was a loud thud. Pukar had fainted on the ground. Baba was the first to come to his side, concerned that he was hurt. Being a large fellow, stout fellow, Pukar was only slightly injured. Later, Pukar explained that Baba, by standing up and perching his foot in the way he had perfectly reenacted the dream he had seen as a child of Lord Ram, who had done exactly the same thing. The following message on religion and politics was read out at several of the darshan programs. The fiery free life which, as God ordained, had commenced from November 15th, makes me plunge into my divine mission of bringing the life in the truth to everyone, without allowing it to be limited or colored by the illusions of duality. As the divine life embraces in its being one and all, including even the members of the animal and vegetable kingdoms, and since from the moment of the attainment of Manonash, annihilation of the limited finite mind, I have attained complete unity with that immeasurable and illimitable divine life. I cannot and will not identify myself with any caste, creed, religion, or political party. From my point of view, all religions are great, but God is greater. In the same way, all political parties are, in their own way, noble, at least in their consciously accepted objectives. But the claims of the undivided and indivisible life are irresistibly supreme, and as such, greater than those of any party, howsoever noble. So, I love and adore all religions, but I am of no religion, nor do I seek to establish another religion or add to the numberless illusions that divide man against man. No religion was ever intended to be anything more than the gateway to God as truth. But every religion has, in the course of time, been converted into a veil, obstructing the undimmed perception of the one truth. As soon as the truth of direct inner realization is intellectualized and formulated, it gets enmeshed in creeds and dogmas. These creeds and dogmas have a tendency to bind the soul in the very attempt to emancipate it. They cover the truth in the very act of seeking to express it. This comic tragedy reveals itself in the retrospective analysis of all the world religions bestowed on man. But it is not inevitable. If man is invariably vigilant and remains unwaveringly loyal to the inner perception of the inexpressible but unchangeable spiritual truth, which ever affirms itself as the one all-embracing life divine, at once indivisible and illimitable. For man's entertainment in Ingota, Lakshmi Chand Paliwal arranged a game of staffs one day. To play the game, two parties swing long sticks, striking at one another forcefully, trying to overstep the boundary of the opposite party. It is quite an intense game, with the danger of serious injury to any careless contender. On Sunday, 23rd November 1952, on their way to Maristana near Mahua, Kashav Nigam told Baba, "A Muslim friend of mine conducts an orphanage. He wishes, if it pleases you, for you to pay a visit to his institution." Baba agreed on one condition. After washing and laying my head on the children's feet, I will give them prasad, but they should remain absolutely quiet and not move when I take their darshan. Kashav accepted and made the necessary arrangements in the orphanage. When Baba arrived, 6 or 7 boys were brought before him. Baba began by washing the feet of the first lad. But when he tried to bow down to him, the boy suddenly stepped back. Baba was noticeably peeved and commented, "When the boy pulled back his feet, had my head touched the ground, this world would have gone to hell." However, Baba did lay his head on the other children's feet and gave them about 20 rupees each as prasad. Baba handed the entire amount to the orphanage manager, who it turned out was greedy and kept the money for himself. They left. Baba said his work was spoiled and that he would not visit any more villages in the district. Pukar and Andarsh Kare began to weep. On the way, Baba had the car stopped and he got out. Pukar spread his coat on the ground and Baba sat on it under a tamarind tree. He told Kashav and Pukar, "It did not go well. It is an unlucky happening and bodes ill for the orphanage and the village. The only remedy to free them from bad luck is for me to bow down and give prasad of rupees 14 to 14 handsome and intelligent orphan boys under 14 years of old the moment I reach Maristana." Kashav and Pukar agreed, although Pukar was skeptical about locating enough boys of that description in a village as small as Mahua, with a population of only 400. Further on, Their journey was delayed by a collapsed makeshift bridge. While the work of repairing the bridge was going on, Baba pointed to a young village boy and told Pukar to speak with him. Ask his age. The boy replied 14. Baba looked very happy and gestured, "This is a good sign." He blessed the boy and later remarked, "Someday he will become a saint." Kashav and a few others did their best to locate the number of boys required, and 14 of the correct age were eventually found. Thus, on arriving in Maristana, this was the first activity Baba performed. Kashav Nigam and his brother Mukundalal had a very good mud hut built in a clearing on a hilltop outside the village of Mahua, which was christened Maristana, Meher's threshold. Baba liked the place and its scenery very much. It was there that, for the first time, Kashav read out to Baba his long poem, Meher Chalisa, which he had composed 2 years before. Footnote. Chalisa means 40. Kashav's poem consists of 40 couplets in praise of Baba.
Thank you, Rosalie. Mahu, could you unmute and continue, please?
Okay, sure. So this is in, can you roll it up? I know which, is it 19, the year 1952, page 3201. His words of praise made Baba happy. Baba liked the composition so much that he had it repeated. Afterwards, he commented, "These verses have deeply touched my heart." Keshav's entire family came in Baba's contact there. His wife, Sudhadevi, and daughters, which is Meher Prabha and Meher Jayoti and Meher Mani, all had private interviews with Baba. Balveer Singh made the best arrangements for food, and indeed throughout their entire tour of Hamirpur, fine food was provided and excellent facilities arranged for Baba and his mandali. But in the fiery life, enjoying such refreshments in a relaxed manner could not be relished by those accompanying Baba. I'm sorry. A message about the paths to God was read out at one public function titled High Roads to God. So the message is, in an important sense, all walks of life and all paths ultimately lead but to the one goal, namely God. All rivers enter into ocean, in spite of the diverse directions in which they flow, and in spite of the many meanderings which characterize their paths. However, there are certain high roads which take the pilgrim directly to the divine destination. They are important because they avoid prolonged wandering in the wilderness of complicated byways in which the pilgrim is often unnecessarily caught up. The rituals and ceremonies of organized religions can lead the seeker only to the threshold of the true inner journey, which proceeds along certain high roads. These remain distinct from each other for a very considerable distance, though toward the end they all get merged in each other. In the earlier phases, they remain distinct owing to the diversity of sanskaric contexts of individuals and the differences of their temperaments. Yeah. In any case, it should be clear from the very beginning that although the roads may be many, the goal is and always will be only one: attainment of union with God. The quickest of these high roads lies through the God-man, who is consciously one with the truth. In the God-man, God reveals himself in all his glory, with his infinite power, unfathomable knowledge, inexpressible bliss, and eternal existence. The path to the man God is available only to those fortunate ones who approach him in complete surrender and unswerving faith. Complete surrender to the man God is, however, possible only to the very advanced aspirants. But when this is not possible, the other high roads which can eventually win the grace of God are: 1. Love for God, an intense longing to see him and to be united with him. Next page.
Yes. So when you said man God, it is written that it's God man.
Oh,
But
I'm so sorry. Did I say man God? I
it's
meant
basically the
God
same, isn't
man.
it?
And in my heart, I was thinking of God man. Have I not? Yes, of course, God man is available and God man is. Number 2, being in constant company with saints and lovers of God and rendering them wholehearted service. Number 3, avoiding lust, greed, anger, hatred, and the temptations of power, fame, and fault finding. 4, leaving everyone and everything in complete external renunciation and in solitude, devoting oneself to fasting, prayer, and meditation. 5, carrying on all worldly duties with equal acceptance of success or failure, and with a pure heart and clean mind, and remaining unattached in the midst of intense activity. And number 6, selfless service of humanity without any thought of gain or reward. A poor cobbler had been among those hired to build Baba's hut in Meherstana. While laboring wholeheartedly in the cold day and night, he had fallen ill. He was so ill that when Baba arrived, the man could not attend the darshan program. The next day, with a crowd trailing behind him, Baba himself came to the poor man's tiny one-room hut. Hearing noise outside, he came out and was dazed at seeing Meher Baba there. He ran to him like a crazed man and fell weeping at his feet. Baba and the Mandali raised him up and led him back inside his bed. Sitting next to him on the broken cot, Baba wiped away his tears with his hand. "Oh Lord, forgive me," the man cried. Quote, "I cannot offer you anything, no fruit, no flower, no coconut. Still, you have been merciful you have been merciful enough to enter a poor cobbler hut. Baba answered compassionately, your love is the most precious offering you can give. In Hamirpur, Baba had stipulated, I will first work with a mast and then give darshan to the public. So Baidul went out in search of a mast in the area. To show him the way, Keshav suggested he take along a man named Swamidin Sharma, even though this person had no faith at all in Baba and had led a less than stellar life. When Baidul was inquiring about musts, Sharma suddenly remembered one known as Maulana Sahib. He took Baidul to him, and Maulana consented to go to Baba. Baidul brought the mast to the Darshan pavilion, where, in a curtained off space, Baba contacted him alone. After their contact, while walking back to the pandal, the mast gripped Sharma by the hand and led him before Baba. There was a large crowd near Baba on the days. Sharma went forward for darshan as the mast sang this refrain. O Meher Baba, you did not know wandering in the world was a madman. Sharma was unimpressed by Baba's darshan in Hamirpur. Although he had no wish to go to Meheristana, on Keshav's exhortation, he went there also. On the evening of 23 November, he again took Baba's darshan, and this time it had a profound effect. The following day, Sharma had to return to Hamirpur. Baba was to proceed to Mahoba. With his friends, Sharma left Meheristana very early in the morning for Kabrai, where he could catch a bus. Baba's darshan the previous evening had touched his heart, and he longed to see Baba once more. Just as this thought came in his mind, Baba's car pulled up and stopped. Baba got out and embraced all those waiting for the bus, except for Sharma. Then Baba got back into the car and was about to drive away. Sharma was bitterly disheartened and thought, because I'm a great sinner, Baba has not embraced me. But the all-merciful Lord again got out of the car and, walking up to Sharma, embraced him lovingly. There were tears in Sharma's eyes. That day brought about a drastic change in his life. He gave up his former ways and dedicated himself to serving Meher Baba's cause. The largest darshan program during this period of the fiery free life was held in the town of Rath on Tuesday, 25 November 1952. Gaya Prasad Khare, his son Adarsh, and his whole family, including Gauri Shankar Vaidya, has planned the program, which was attended by not less than 20,000 people. Gaya Prasad had erected a huge pavilion and all the best arrangements had been made and decorations hung. A great throng of humanity collected, and Baba distributed prasad non-stop throughout the day until evening. As was the usual procedure, one of the 7 messages was read out after Baba's explanation on the fiery free life. One message was titled, Our Ills and Our Remedies. So the message is, in the world of quiet speculation, as well as in the world of surging political activity or individual striving, men are desperately trying to remedy the many ills to which humanity is heir. All our creeds and faiths, all our parties and isms are so many practical solutions offered toward this purpose. But though good in their intention and starting point, they often create confusion and chaos instead of solutions, because they lose sight of the inescapable truth that all external organization is doomed to failure unless it is implemented by inner spiritual transformation of the individual. I am therefore not concerned with parties, creeds, and isms, but only with those fundamental values which must be wholeheartedly and universally accepted if humanity is to be truly safe. I am equally concerned with the saint and the sinner, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, the ignorant and the wise, the East and the West. For them all, the one remedy of remedies which is recommended is a spiritual understanding, which at once includes and supersedes all other forms of knowledge. It inevitably precipitates the blending of theory and practice, for it is as much of the heart as of the mind. When understanding is our law, we have love, which is imperishable, and action, which is dynamically creative love without entanglement, and action without attachment to results. True understanding about man's place in God's life universal will enable man to avoid much suffering, physical and mental, sometimes invited by himself through wrong action and often created by himself through vitiated imagination. All joy, howsoever alluring, will fade away unless it springs from life in the truth everlasting. All suffering will only harden or embitter the heart unless it is accepted with grace and resignation and utilized as an awakener to real values. Suffering will haunt us again and again in innumerable ways unless we give up the illusion of separateness arising out of false identification with the body or the ego mind. And true joy will evade us again and again unless we get firmly established in the imperishable sweetness or ananda of life eternal, which admits no divisions and accepts no limitations. Be disciples of this life divine, which vibrates eternally in one and all. At one point, the tremendous crowd in wrath became out of control. There was much confusion, and a woman approached Erech and told him she had lost her son in the crowd. So over the microphone, Erech announced, "A small boy has been lost. He should please be brought to the dais as soon as he is found." Soon afterwards, a boy near Baba cried out, "Mother!" He was the lost child. He had been sitting near Baba, gazing at him, when he heard the announcement. The boy had taken Baba's prasad of sweets and was sitting eating it, thinking if he finished it, Baba would give him prasad for a second time. His mother, however, came and took him away, spoiling his plans.
A good place to pick up next week on page 3205.